It's Leclerc.
Charles Leclerc!
Welcome to Negative Camber, the Motorsports show.
Far enough back, he's going to make the lunge down the inside!
The ultimate pit stop.
The safety car is coming in.
Fueling your passion for motorsport.
With an emotional moment that means everything.
All of the latest results, analysis, and interviews.
Roar the drivers on to the final lap of this race!
I'm Jamie Lemura, motorsport enthusiast, historian, and media presenter.
And I'm Lee Harrison, motorsport professional, Sprintmaster Australia race driver, and Formula One alumni.
Hello everyone and welcome to another instalment of Negative Camber, the Motorsports show. I'm your host Jamie Lemura, and across the desk from me in a somewhat quiet weekend for this gent. Normally he's running into the studio all hot and flustered after spending all day at the track. I have none other than my co-driver in this caper of ours, Mr. Lee Harrison. Hello, sir.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Yep.
What time zone are you in?
Western States.
Western States.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
Dear, oh dear. You've washed your hair. I can tell. It's very, very fluffy today.
Yeah. I'd washed that in the shower before I came.
Look at it.
But yeah, look, it's you say it was a relatively quiet weekend, but I was at the track all day yesterday, so and then partied into the night, halfway into the night with our friend Biscuits at his Buck show, and watching the Matildas game. So yeah, it hasn't been exactly a quiet weekend, but probably quieter than yours after your big trek to Sydney.
Oh, we'll cover that in a sec, but how good was the Matildas? Seriously. For a whole host of reasons outside of course, the fact that Australia have made the semis of a World Cup, but for women's sport in general, and just last night for me was like, if ever we needed like the anvil hitting the ground and rippling effect and cracking along the ground of what women's sport will hopefully eventuate in this country, last night was it, for sure.
Yeah, I wish we'd done it in a bit more convincing fashion, but nail-biting finish with the multiple missed penalties in the penalty shootout. But yeah, like I said, loads and loads of fans, like 70-odd thousand at the game, plus the millions of fans watching across the globe on the TV. It's awesome that they're getting the recognition that they deserve, and making it so far in the World Cup is such a great achievement.
I say it because there's a lot of parallels with women's football and women in motorsport, where 10 years ago there was 300 people watching the Matildas play an international match, and fast forward now and they've got 80,000 people at a stadium. Women's motorsport barely recognised in 10 years ago. You had a little smattering here or there, whereas now we're starting to see the largest motorsport code globally, F1, really sort of pushing that women in motorsport agenda. It's only going to be a matter of time, and I can't wait for the day that we actually have a woman rolling out on the grid for, say, the Australian Grand Prix in a car with a genuine chance to win.
Yeah, but it's not even just in like a racing sense as well. It's all the initiatives in the background, like the FIA Girls on Track program, like the governing body of the sport itself is really pushing initiatives to help break down the barriers, I suppose, of entry for females, which is really cool. You're seeing more uptake in officials that are female, and more drivers and pit crew and all that sort of stuff. So yeah, it's all starting to happen. Unfortunately, motorsport's a little bit more of a niche topic than something like the world game of football. But yeah, no, it's only a matter of time, and things like the F1 Academy, which we touched on last show, are definitely helping break down the barriers.
Yeah, this generation that we live in now it's renowned for doing things that would be perplexing and interesting at the very least. However, they have laid the groundworks for equality in sport, and it's been way overdue, and long may it continue, and let's hope things like the governments and all that sort of stuff get behind it and let it foster and grow to the sport.
Or support it.
And support it. Yeah, absolutely. A couple of little notifications while we're on the newsletter section of the show. Let's call it that. Housekeeping, yes. Southern Go Kart Club Members Night, which is on the 9th of September. So Southern's members.
Shay, if you're listening, Shay, if you were listening.
Yes, Lee.
This is the go-kart event, Shay. This is the go-kart event that was in your calendar, and we cannot work out what it was for.
The Southern Go Kart Club night and the Scuderia Ferrari Club are working together to host a night for the Southern's members on the 9th of September, which there is no racing involved, so You have no excuses not to attend. We're going to have chicken on a spit, lamb on a spit. We're going to have prawn skewers. We're going to have lasagna. We're going to have potato bake. We're going to have salads. We're going to have dips. We're going to have pork sausages, Greek sausages. We're going to have cakes. We're also going to be raffling off prizes. So it's $55 per head, and we're going to be having unlimited coffee and tea courtesy of Caparizzo Espresso. So get on down. Jump onto the Ferrari Club website, www.sfcadelaide.com/online store. $55 per person. Must be purchased by August 20th to allow us enough opportunity to cater. Kids under 12 are free. Biscuits are small enough to probably get through as a 12-year-old if he shaved. So I expect to see as many people there attending as possible. Feel free to hit me up if you have any questions. But it's MotoGP on that night, so we're planning to have that on the background. Footy finals on. So it's a good opportunity for club members, both of us really, to sort of sit down, have a meal, shoot the you-know-what in a relaxed setting without the pressure of having to change axles and repair damaged carts and talk about gripped up, rubbed up, scrubbed up, everything that's up. And, yeah, enjoy the night in a very relaxed setting. So, yes.
Club members and motorsport aficionados alike. Yes. It doesn't just have to be Southern Club members. It doesn't have to be members of the Ferrari Club. It can be just anyone that listens to the podcast, anyone that's a motorsport fan. Bring your family along so that they can meet all of the profiles and the talent that you speak about when you get home after a long weekend of go-karting. But yeah, bring everyone along and make a big night of it.
Speaking of me, a funny story. So we're at the Madame Tussauds. Obviously, everyone from QuickBooks is there. They've heard a little bit about the podcast. I had 3 separate people come up to me and say, "You are the Jamie Lemura." And I'm like, "Me? Yes, we listen to your podcast, Negative Camber." 2 out of the 3, I have no idea who these people are. But hey, go on. They said, "We want to have a chat to you." Sure. What do you want to talk about? The Nick DeVries podcast. Okay. What is it? Lee has no idea what he's talking about, quote unquote. And I said, right, I need to record this. Let's sit down. We'll have a chat. It was fantastic.
Yep, good.
More people on my side.
So those people aren't then, Formula One aficionados then?
Admittedly, they did jump on when I asked them. I said, when did you like following Formula One? Oh, when Drive to Survive came out on Netflix. Yep. I thought, yeah, okay, grab a ticket, join the queue.
Yeah, so when did they start actually taking note of who the drivers were that weren't Max Verstappen and Lewis Hamilton?
Yeah. Pretty much everyone. Thought it was meant to rain today. I was expecting it was going to be 10 mils or whatever it was, and it was...
No, we got it all yesterday. I was at the track all day yesterday, and it was absolutely teeming down.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I thought it was going to dry up, but she didn't.
Yeah, it was really sunny when I left Sydney yesterday, and it was funny because I saw all the Sydney-siders catching planes flying out to Brisbane because they're all decked out in their Aussie scarves and all that sort of stuff. But the cloud and the turbulence on the way, whoever that pilot was, QF737, you need an award, my friend, because to rise up above the clouds and sit above all of that and then land, I was expecting it to be like a roller coaster landing in Adelaide. Very, very smooth. So whoever the pilot was for QF737, God bless you. You made my life much, much more enjoyable. I've got a question to ask you. Nothing bad. Orlando and I today dug up my PS1 and I started looking at my old computer games and my Sega Mega Drive 2. And it took me back, and I'm thinking, wow, I remember playing these games. Toka 2, Toka Touring Car, F1 97, F1 95 with Murray Walker on PS1, because I'm still in PS1. And then Mega Drive 2 was out and sent a Super Monaco Grand Prix 2. And it took me back to my childhood. And I'm thinking, I know Lee and I, there's about nearly a generation's worth of gap in terms of age, but surely you would have been playing computer games when you were a kid.
Yeah, flat out. That was, if you ask my mum, she'll give you a very, very funny story about me and playing computer games.
Oh, do tell.
No, I can't. It's,
why not?
Probably not radio safe. But yeah, it boils down to me noticing my level of excitement for playing computer games, especially motorsport centered computer games.
Are we talking something physically happening to you?
Yeah, yep.
The boy discovered he was a man.
Something along those lines. I grew up that day, that's for sure. But yeah, no, I definitely played a whole heap of computer games. Nigel Mansell's Grand Prix something or other World Championship was Super Nintendo spec for me. But again, you even take it back. Mario Kart was always something that we were playing flat out, and then all the F1 games on PlayStation 2, Nintendo, Toka touring cars was always a hot favourite, and then I discovered the PC. So I started, with dirt track racing, which our friend Glenn Davidson did a lot of the work for on the design of that game.
Oh, really?
He did all the heaps of the drawing of the track and the surface and that sort of stuff.
Yep.
So he was pretty clever with that. That sort of kicked off that dirt track racing 2, led for all the rest of it, and then pretty quickly wanted to get into something a bit more serious, and then that was when iRacing stepped in, and nothing even comes close to iRacing. I've played every sim racing title that there is under the sun at the moment, and the only thing that I'm really, really keen to do is try and play World of Outlaws, the new one on PlayStation in the near future, but that's been developed by iRacing anyway, so it's probably just the same but different. I can sit on the couch and do it rather than sit in my simulator and do it.
My first Formula 1 game that I was exposed to outside of the Mega Drive stuff on PC was, do you remember Grand Prix 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, so good mate, one of my best mates, Zahn, had it on PC, and that was about 94, I reckon it was, and that blew my mind.
That was the first computer game that we bought a steering wheel and pedals for. So we had the original Grand Prix by Jeff Crammond, Microprose Grand Prix, and I used to thrash that. I'd go to my nan and pop's house up at Birdwood, and whatever, they would have it on their computer, and it was literally in the door, do your pleasantries, and then I was in there just cutting laps and laps and laps. And then Grand Prix 2 and Grand Prix 3 came out. It was long weekend sleepovers at Nick's place, and we would all be playing Grand Prix 3. It was just, I played video games. I think at 3 I started playing video games, and I'm still playing them now.
Yeah. I used to love it, the graphics card when it would, in Grand Prix 2, when it would hit the wall, and then out of the blue, this car would just elevate and retire.
Yeah.
I used to call it a Copperfield.
Grand Prix 3 was the one where it really took off, because you could ride wheels and stuff in it, and the damage was relatively realistic for a game, and I think it was around 2000. Computer games, they're the way to go.
Yeah, I don't know, man. I loved your sim. I didn't spend enough time on it to actually, when I was over at your house that time, to really, really appreciate it. And I can understand why drivers use it as a training tool to familiarise themselves with tracks and stuff like that. I don't know, for me, there was something missing, in terms of feeling that feeling on the track.
It's definitely still mine's. I wouldn't call it basic. It's definitely it's on the upper end, but again, there's still a lot further that you can go. We can add motion to it. We can add rumblers to underneath the seat, so you feel the curbs and stuff a bit better. There's some of the ones that they actually go and train in, like the Chevy sim that Shane Van Gisbergen done some work in before the Chicago street race, and he would have done some work in it again before this weekend. That thing is next level, and all the stuff that the Formula 1 sims, they actually have 360-degree movement in some sims, and so it's absolutely unreal.
Well, it's replaced the test session, really, hasn't it?
It is, yeah.
Well, that's why they got the test drivers now, basically computer game experts.
Yeah, basically.
So, actually, Gran Turismo, that movie's coming out. Or is out on the cinemas? Yeah. You know what? I think that's the only driver that's actually gone from that story. Or is there more now?
There's a few more now. You're going to stump me trying to. This will be a follow up for next episode. But there's definitely a few more that have gone through and become real racing drivers after starting in Simland, basically. And I think there's been some news out recently that Max Verstappen's looking at starting his own GT team with a view of putting sim races basically all the way through his own GT3 team. Drivers from his team that he races with on the sim as well, Team Redline. So, it's definitely, you learn a lot of basic car control off of that for sure. And like you said, good to know roughly where the track goes before you get there. We even use it for the go-karting on the kart sim. We downloaded Wanneroo before we went to Wanneroo, and it takes away that 5 sessions of actually having to figure out where the track actually goes. You know which corners are coming up already, so you can sort of brace yourself for them and get onto your test program a lot quicker.
Speaking of go-karting, you're at Festival State Cup next week at Monado?
Yep. Yeah, I'll be there.
Yeah. I'll be thinking of you. That'll be that'll be it.
Number one pretty stupid thing was putting it on the same weekend as the Bend. Only 15, 20 kilometres down the road.
Yep.
That was stupid thing number one. I don't know why we couldn't have shifted it to whenever, this weekend after. There's probably some clash with something from Melbourne or something, but hey, who cares? Yeah, that's a bit of a silly thing to do.
Yeah, look, there's been talk about it, and I've been critical of it in the past, and of course I've got good relationships with a couple of people within karting SA, so I want to be really careful, but we need to stop. If they're going to be planning fixtures, V8 Supercar fixtures were out November last year.
Yeah.
And so we don't get Karting South Australia events locked in until January. That's when the fixture normally comes out. So, and there's been multiple times this year when, there was a bottleneck because of Southern's track being fixed and all that sort of stuff. I get all that. But in SA, you have to avoid the key events. Avoid the key events as much as possible so that way you can maximise your attendances.
Yep.
So, because, okay, the V8 Supercars at the Bend, but there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be there. I'm one of them. I'm taking my kids there.
The way they've done the timetable and stuff, you can't even go to the V8s on Saturday and then race on Sunday. Like, it's a 2-day race meeting now to be at Festival State Cup. So, we can't even go. We've got to choose one or the other.
Yep.
I guess I'm in a lucky spot where I don't really need to go and do Monado. I'll just go and do Mount Gambier and make up for it with my drop round there. But yeah, some people aren't in that fortunate situation, and if they want to win the Festival State Cup for whatever reason, then they're kind of forced into a hole to do the Monado round and miss out and go on to the Bend.
Yeah, because the Saturday is just practice, qualify, and then qualifying, and that's it. All the races are pretty much on the Sunday.
All the races are on Sunday, and it's the first round that they've changed the schedule up to be this way.
Yep.
And it's really, really frustrating, to be honest, because now you've basically got to spend the whole of Saturday. You can't do anything on Saturday now. Like, I can't go out with the girls and go out with the kids for breakfast or brunch or whatever, and then go to the racetrack on Sunday and just race. Right? I rock up for qualifying, like a one-day race meeting. I've got to go to the track on Saturday. I've got to drive I'm lucky I'm at the bottom of the freeway, so it's still 1 hour for me. I've got to drive up there, set up, get kitted up, and this is just as the bare minimum. And then I've got to go out for qualifying. So 5 minutes on track, 8 minutes on track, whatever it's going to be, to then pack up and come home. So I've got to waste my whole day to go and do 8 minutes of track time. It just seems absolutely, just daft. Absolutely daft. Like, what is that actually going to kill us if we put the qualifying on Sunday, or leave the format the same? So at least we're up there for qualifying and a race on Saturday, so then we're home with our loved ones earlier on Sunday and can actually maybe do something for dinner on Sunday night, like cook a roast or whatever, and unwind. But nah, we're not going to do that. So
yeah, look, I don't mind the 2-day event fixture because I think the nature of the championship is worthy of it. However, just don't do it on a major event like, say, V8 Supercars.
It's never been 2-day event. Like, back in the day, we used to have 15 classes racing with bigger fields than we've got now, and it was always done on a one-day event. Barossa was always a Saturday afternoon, Saturday night, and every other race meeting was Sunday. You'd go to the track if you wanted to practice on the Saturday, but then you didn't have to be at the track. Yeah. This 2-day commitment for a Festival State Cup round is absolutely daft. It needs to be 1 day.
Well, I'll think of you on Pit Straight on Sunday with my kids and watching Speed Hive 15, 20 minutes down the road, looking at the beautiful MS, just commentating Fox Sports as he always does. The great man, the GOAT. So I tell you what, I feel
my helmet, I don't know where it's come from.
Mark Webber. So, but yeah, that'll be interesting. Yeah, but at the end of the day, they've just got to work out a way with fixtures and stuff like that. I mean, like for example, there's no excuses for AKC clashes as a good example, because this year Karting Australia had the fixtures out by November, which was unheard of.
Yeah, it's hard. Like,
I know it's hard. It's challenging.
It's hard. It's challenging to fit everything in and give everyone their fair share. But yeah, it's a busy time of the year with everything else that's going on. So, I thought, it would have been a pretty safe bet to, priorities be not book anything for the Formula One weekend, not book anything for a V8 Supercar round at the Bend, and not book anything for the Adelaide 500.
And the Bathurst 1000.
Bathurst 1000. And then not book anything on AKC weekends. The rest of them, Like, if we've got to run a race meeting at the same time as Victoria's got the Country Series, then people are just going to have to choose which way they want to go. There's not enough people going to the Victorian Country Series to justify us not being able to run, or vice versa, not enough people from Victoria coming to the Festival State Cup to justify us worrying about what they're doing.
To be honest with you, I don't think, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I can't remember when a Victorian driver has actually, or drivers have come to compete in a South Australian meet outside of, say, like a curtain raiser for an AKC. Yeah, and I've been doing it for 4 years.
There's a few, like Noah Enright goes and does Country Series. There's a few other, Christiana Creaser, Sam Spiteri, I think they go and do, in juniors, go and do a lot of the Country Series stuff.
Oh, but I meant the other way, like the Vic's coming to us.
Yeah. I guess it's on the border, but Troy and Shane Moreland come to us as well for a lot of the rounds, and they're 4 hours away. They're in Mount Gambier, so they do tend to be able to jump across the border. But yeah, no, you're right. There's not very many Victorians coming over to support us unless it's a precursor for a big race meeting.
Yeah, so you know what? How about, I'll look at it this way. My suggestion, not that it means much, would be karting South Australia, focus on South Australia. Put the priorities on the South Australian events first. Don't worry about the Victorians, because they don't give two hoots about what we do, right? Then it gives people a choice. Either put your commitment to racing in Victoria, or put your commitment to racing locally in SA. Support your local side of it first, and then worry about the interstate stuff if it's AKC. That's my stamp of approval.
Done.
Like that. And in the meantime, I'll tend to dislocating my finger. Mm-hmm. Have we got some around the world?
No, we're going to a break.
We're going to a break?
Yep.
Cool. All right. Well, let's go off to a break.
You're listening to Negative Camber.
Welcome back to Negative Camber, the Motorsports show. I've been put off by your excitement over the video game stuff, man. That's quite disconcerting, really.
Everyone's got to have a passion for something.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Like, any human that comes into my life has
to have pixelation.
has got some big shoes to fill.
16 or 32-bit.
Still back then in Commodore 64, playing 8-bit.
Well, at least you didn't have a floppy disk. But anyway.
Oh, my goodness gracious me.
Anyway.
I'm glad that's the only story that's come. I'm not going to live this one down now. I can just think about the little clips that my wife has got ready to go now. She's going to be on it.
Okay, while I recover, take us around the world, please.
Alrighty, 2 races in the NASCAR Cup Series, races held at Richmond Raceway and Michigan International Raceway. Chris Buescher has gone back-to-back with
What's his name?
Chris Buescher. Chris Buescher is his name. Has gone back-to-back with wins at both events, leading home Denny Hamlin in the race at Richmond and also holding off Martin Truex Jr. at Michigan. A restart with 3 laps to go after a late race spin by Daniel Suarez saw Hamlin dive into turn 1 too aggressively in pursuit of Buescher, and he drifted up the track, allowing Buescher, who had started 26th, to get a gap that would last until the finish. It was not quite so easy for Buescher in Michigan, however, as that race had to be postponed until Monday after rain interrupted the Sunday afternoon racing after only 75 laps of 200 were completed. When racing resumed, it was Buescher, Truex Jr. and Tyler Reddick who looked like they could win the race. Buescher benefited from the side draft of a lap driver at around the same time as Truex being held up, which allowed Buescher to take the lead with 10 laps to go. It's the first time since 2010 that Roush Fenway Keselowski Racing has gone back-to-back and won races. The teams are currently at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway on the road course in a double-header with the IndyCar Series. Shane Van Gisbergen's qualified 8th position for the race, while Brody Kostecki will be moved to the rear of the field after crashing in qualifying, where he set the 11th fastest time. So Brody's got some work to do. Shane's definitely in with a chance. Some other noticeable names in that field are Kamui Kobayashi, Jenson Button and Mike Rockenfeller, so DTM fame from Mike Rockenfeller and the 2X F1 drivers. Moving on to IndyCar. 2 races have also been held in the IndyCar Series, races at Nashville and Indianapolis. Andretti Autosport's Kyle Kirkwood held off a fast-finishing Scott McLaughlin to take the win win in Nashville by just 0.7 of a second, with title rivals Alex Palou and Joseph Newgarden finishing third and fourth. It was Chip Ganassi Racing's Scott Dixon who won in Indianapolis after spinning on the opening lap. Dixon benefited from a poor qualifying performance, which left him with extra sets of the softer option tyre, which he was able to use on his run back through the field. Dixon, who became the record holder for most consecutive race starts at 319, emerged as the leader after the final round of pit stops. Graham Rahal chased hard but ultimately fell short. Alex Palou finished 7th, with Newgarden finishing in 25th. Palou now holds a 101-point lead with only 3 races remaining, so looking like a bit of a lead to overcome there for Newgarden, but it's still in the realms of possibility at this moment in time. World of Outlaws, Kyle Larson was victorious in the 62nd running of the Knoxville Nationals, one of the flagship events in the World of Outlaws Championship. Young Money led all 50 of the laps to bring home his second victory in this event. David Gravel drove from position 22 on the grid to storm home in second, while 11-time Nationals winner Donny Schatz finished third. Brad Sweet, in the meantime, has regained the lead in the championship, 14 points ahead of David Gravel. In WRC Finland, Elfyn Evans has breathed life into the WRC Championship title fight after delivering a dominant history-making victory at Rally Finland. The Toyota driver produced one of his most dominant drives in the WRC with a 39-second win over Thierry Neuville. The win makes Evans the most successful British driver in the 72-year history of the event, and he has matched Finnish greats Ari Vatanen and Timo Salonen as the 2-time winners of the event. Championship leader and pre-rally favourite Kalle Rovanperä rolled his car, causing terminal damage to his Toyota. His retirement sees his lead in the championship cut to just 25 points with 4 rallies remaining in the season. Formula 2 was in action alongside the most recent round of the F1 held at Spa in Belgium. Enzo Fittipaldi and Jack Doohan were the drivers who came out on top in the sprint and feature races respectively, while Théo Pourchaire has taken the championship lead with consecutive second placings. A difficult round for Fredrik Vesti has seen him slip to second in the standings, 12 points behind. After a string of good results, Doohan has climbed to 4th in the championship, 38 points adrift of the lead. So they've still got about 4 rounds remaining as well, so anything can still happen there. FIA F3, Formula 3 was also in action at Spa with Caio Collet and Taylor Barnard taking the wins. Australian Christian Mansell showed good speed in the feature race and followed Barnard home in second place. Championship leader Bortolotto failed to score any points as Paul Aron jumped ahead of Pepe Marti in the championship chase. With only Monza remaining on their schedule, it'll take a monumental effort to overcome Bortolotto, with his lead currently sitting at 38 points. And as we touched on briefly in the last episode, Jake Dennis has emerged victorious in the battle for the Formula E Championship title after starting his season in near-perfect fashion with a win in the opening race, followed by 2 consecutive second-place finishes. Dennis then went on to not score points for the next 3 months. He then followed that up with 5 consecutive podiums that propelled him back into the title fight, and on home streets in tricky London conditions, Dennis held his nerves and put the championship to bed.
Well done, my friend. Well done.
Grazie, mi amigo.
Got my composure back. It's all good.
It won't take long for you to lose that.
No, it doesn't. Not these days anyway. Age will weary me. Okay. Mr. SVG apparently has been quite vocal about events that have been happening in the Supercars Championship. He made an appearance on the Dale Jr. podcast, and very interesting to see what he had to say on that. Here's a little bit of a snippet.
You have a whole career going on in Australia. How do you make these decisions? When do you make these decisions?
Yeah, I think I'm working with the team now, because earlier in the year I signed a deal to carry on for 1 year at least, and then I didn't obviously expect the NASCAR race to go so well, and it has been a bit of a struggle there with the way the series is at the moment. It's not as enjoyable. So
what's going on? Yeah, why?
Just a new car and stuff, and there's so much background.
What's different about the car?
They changed it, a whole new chassis and concept, and everyone's the same parts. It's very similar to here.
It sounds like Cup Series.
Delayed, but when you read all the articles from last year about the drivers' problems and stuff, it's very similar, But the qualifying there is awesome, but the racing sucks. It's so boring. Like, you're driving around at 30% trying to keep the tyres, and everyone's just following each other, and all the parts are the same, and the car's got a very narrow setup window. Everyone's running the same setup, basically. and there's a minimum tyre pressure rule of 17 pound. So everyone goes out on 17, they come on at the same time, drive around at the same pace, and the tyre just explodes because it's running too high, and you just follow each other around. It's mind-numbing. So
wow.
Yeah, so I come here and like the race is just a hustle the whole time. You're just driving flat out, and that's what I love.
Very interesting. I have utmost respect for Shane Van Gisbergen, very, very gifted driver, but probably 50% of what he said was someone that is, let's just say, I'll use the words kindly, commenting on the fact that what made Triple Eight so good has the advantages of what made them good technically has now been eroded, and he is not necessarily a fan of it because the results this year indicate that. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. Your take on it?
He's one of the best at saving tyres. So basically, yeah, well, it's come down to more than that. He is still one of the best drivers on the grid. But yeah, it's kind of weird to see them go from being the front runner all the time to now sitting behind. They're still pretty fast. I think they've got pretty unlucky in the first few races of the year with that exclusion at Newcastle and all that sort of stuff as well. Otherwise, they probably would be leading the championship still, and I think that's probably weighing on him a little bit. I think he held his tongue a little bit, and it's not so much more about the cars and that more so the stewarding, where something that flies at one race for one driver doesn't fly at the next race for a different driver. So I think that's playing on him as well. Whereas, you know, like you said there, that he goes into NASCAR and they race hard. They race hard. They race from green flag to checker flag. And they do, you know, get up on each other and battle it out. Whereas everything else that he's driving around in a V8 supercar that's, 30% aggressiveness because the tyre won't last as long. And yeah, you can't even rub up against someone, otherwise you're going to get excluded from the race.
So that's the thing. Like, there's many things that you've covered there, which, and this is what grinds my gears. I know we've fast forwarded the segment an hour and a bit, but for me, when I read some of the mind-numbing, and forgive me for swearing, some of the mind-numbing shit, rubbish that I read from, say, supposed supporters, the keyboard warriors on social media about some of the stuff that happens. They're quick to blame Supercars about the driving standards, this, that, the other. It's a Motorsport Australia steward decision.
It's not really, because the Supercars race director is who puts those sorts of incidences up to the stewards. So a bit of background, if you're a steward, you don't actually watch any racing. You're not allowed to watch the racing. You sit in a different room, and you're only brought to the attention of the incidences that need your guys over. So it's not to do with the stewards. The stewards are then just making an assessment on what they've seen from the stuff that you're bringing to them. If that race director doesn't call that up or the clerk of course doesn't call that out to the stewards, then it goes on without worry. So
are the stewards selected by Motorsport Australia, or are they selected by Supercars?
They're selected by Motorsport Australia.
Yeah.
And the problem is there's the race director / clerk of course is calling up one person for doing one thing one week, and then the next week, you look at, so the perfect example is Brodie and Shane at Perth.
Yep.
Right? They beat up on each other. They door banged for 2-3 laps side by side. Brodie was excessively blocking, making Shane work for it. Nothing got said. But then Shane does it, or he rubs a bumper up against Will Brown at Eastern Creek, and he's getting a 5-second, 10-second penalty. So what was the difference?
Yeah.
That's the thing it's becoming to be frustrating for him, I believe.
Yeah. And I mean, a lot of that has probably been, he's brought it upon himself to a degree, but it's also been punctuated by the fact that the stewards haven't actually held a hard line right from the start, where there's been times where, a good example is Simmons Plains last year, where he literally barraged his way past Cameron Waters to take the lead of the race, and the move wouldn't have been executed had he not nudged Cam wide and lose all his momentum coming out of the hairpin at Simmons.
Yeah.
Now, in any other shape or form, that incident should have been reviewed, and likely it would have been either worst case scenario 5-10 second penalty or swap positions, right, redress or whatever. But then they allow that, and there's been enough, and it's been numerous times over of years where people have started to cry out, and we're talking about supporters here, spectators or whatever, saying that there's rules for the Triple Eight team and there's rules for others, and incidents like that are a really, really good example because of Shane's aggressiveness.
Yep.
Questionable racecraft, but aggressiveness, we'll call it that. But then all of a sudden the stewards have clamped down on it this year, right? And to an extent, but it's been inconsistent, as you said. So that causes uproar amongst the ranks.
Yeah, because it's not just Shane that's getting upset with you listen to Cam Waters at the last round, you listen to Chaz Mostert, you listen to everybody. Near on every driver is questioning what's going on upstairs.
Yeah. Going back to the tyre stuff, all you have to do is look through 2 years ago, Below the Bonnet, with Michael Caruso and Dave Reynolds, and for 3/4 of the year, all they're talking about was improving the racing, and it was tyre deg, tyre deg, tyre deg. Yeah. The current car at that time wasn't allowing tyre deg, right? And I quote James Moffat when I was standing next to him at the Adelaide 500 last year. He was talking to a group of spectators and stuff like that. His words were, the cars at that time, fantastic to drive, like really, really comfortable, really nice cars to drive. To race, door to door, terrible because of all the aerodynamic wash and all that sort of stuff. They've taken all that away, right, and they've made the car trickier to drive. But it's almost like these guys are still wanting to race the cars like they had to last year, and it's just going to require a different style.
No, but they can't, because they've all got to drive around so slowly to look after the tyre. And it goes back to saying tyre deg's not necessarily the issue. It's all the drag and aero wash that comes off of cars that you can't follow behind them to get close enough to make a pass. So, yeah, I think if you're driving around at 30% because you know that if you don't, you're going to have to make an extra pit stop than everybody else, then you're not going to be trailblazing to go out in front. Like no one's going to drive any differently. The tyres, like they said, all come on at the same time. They're all driving basically the exact same setup because the setup window is so tiny. So how do you make a difference? You can't make a difference.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Triple Eight will always renowned for starting with low tyre pressures, right? That was a key JW ingredient, and Giz has taken up on that. They've also, at the time, control uprights. Well, the uprights were different for all the teams before they controlled that, and that was a key advantage for Triple Eight cars, especially under braking and stuff like that.
Yeah, well, they manufactured their own stuff, and then all their customer cars were just getting the next level down after they released some stuff. But yeah, like they wanted to make the racing more exciting, and I don't think it's made the racing more exciting.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It depends on what someone would deem as exciting. Is it the fact that there's been more drivers that have come into play this year, like Erebus have come out of the clouds? Yep. I didn't expect them to be as good as what they were.
That's not exciting. Like, I don't care who's winning. I want to see overtaking on track. I want to see people running door to door and making passes and stuff. Like, that's what makes exciting racing. You want to see people having to work for it. The most exciting race that we have had is the race at Perth. That's the one that everyone remembers. Other than that, they've all been bore fests and nothing exciting's happened.
Is NASCAR though as exciting as a pure racing format? I'm posing the question because I look at, say, the Daytona 500. They had 4 scripted yellow flags throughout the race to bunch the field up.
Yeah,
that's not purity in motor racing.
It's not. It's not. I guess like fully pure. But it's exciting. Yeah. And to think about what they're actually doing though, like those guys are traveling at nearly 300 kilometers an hour, an inch off of each other's door handles, like being pushed by somebody else, and you're probably in the back of somebody else's at the same time. Like, if you start to nut down on those sorts of things, that's pretty exciting because it only takes one lapse in someone's judgment and you're seeing the big one like we see at Daytona, like we see at Talladega. But then when you go to other tracks like Michigan or like Richmond Raceway, the short tracks, they're beating up on each other. They're slapping door handles and stuff and throwing dive bombs and it's actually exciting to watch, especially when there's a race like you go back to earlier this year. I'm going to struggle to think of the track off the top of my head, whether it was Martinsville. I think it was Martinsville, and Kyle Larson was driving back through the field because he had some fresh tyres on.
Martinsville.
It was so exciting to watch that drive. And then you just got crazy things like what happened at Martinsville when Ross Chastain threw it against the wall to try and get the playoff spot for last year.
Yeah,
like
that stuff's cool.
And so, what stories do we have like that in like, you know, arguably we don't have a street circle track in V8, so no one could have done something like that. But when was the last time you've seen someone drive from the back of the field through to the front of the field in a V8 supercar race?
Oh, not for a long time. But the races haven't been long enough to allow that to happen, really.
Yeah, there definitely are. They definitely are. The Adelaide 500, 7-8 laps every race.
Something like that, but there's maybe 3 or 4. The back end of this year will be interesting when you've got the Adelaide 500, the Sandown 500, the Bathurst 1000. The thing I love about the series this year is that the mechanical... Okay, there's going to be people that are going to throw snow on this and shade because of what I'm about to say, but the mechanical element is back, where there's an element of mechanical empathy and sympathy is going to be required to get these cars to the finish of the race again, rather than just flat out aero train around Bathurst for 6 hours straight. You get the pace car coming out. You got the lucky dog rule, right? They're going to have pit stops on lap 24, 48. You know, they're going to have a rotor change, this, that, the other. Where it's almost all scripted to become the last hour climax. You know, the famous line, to get a ticket to the end.
Yeah, it's still going to be like that this year. It's not going to be any different. It's just there might be 2 or 3 more pit stops because the tyres aren't going to last as long. Like, it's still going to come down to, and everyone's still going to be driving around the mountain at 30% because all they want to do is get the car to the end of the race. Because if you're not there on lap 160 to have a go on lap 161, you can't win the race.
I don't mind that though, man. Like, maybe because I'm an old timer, you know. I don't mind the fact that they've actually got to have an element of conservative, because that's what the race was all about. The race was 1,000 kilometres, 6.5 hours around that place. It's a hard slog, you know, and it's all about you're testing the team, you're testing the mechanics, you're testing the build quality of what the team have created. There's the driver element too. There's all these elements that added to make it what it was. So I don't mind if they have to conserve speed a little bit to make sure that they get to the end. I mean, we're still talking about some of the great races of, you know, the last 60 years, right? And these guys weren't doing 2.4s, 2.5s in a race. Like, I talk about the 2-litre race. You know, they're doing 2 minute 16 lap times. You know, but the quality of the racing was there. You know,
but they weren't driving around in an aero train. They weren't driving around saving the car. They were pushing every single lap. They were doing 2.16s, but that was the most they could get out of the car. These guys are going to qualify to 2.04, 2.03, and they're going to be driving around 2.05, 2.6s. Like, we should, if we're qualifying at 2.03s, put a few kilos of fuel in the car, we should be doing 2.04s. Like, that should be the race pace, but they're not. They're going to drive around there slow as anything, like they do at every other race, and it'll come down to who can eke 1 extra lap out of their tyres or 2 extra laps out of their tyres so they can get, you know, that little bit closer to the end and hit as late as possible to have the freshest tyres at the end of the race.
So I'd come to you, all right, as, you know, us being commentators and motorsport experts in however you want to classify an expert. Peter Adderton, for example, came out and put his supposed 10 changes that he would do to make the sport better. A lot of them were, you know, a lot of it was actually off-track stuff. It wasn't necessarily the product that's on track per se. So, I mean, you've watched enough of the races this year to sort of have form some element of opinion, right? Maybe. Give me 5. What would be some of the 5 things that you would change to make the category better?
Longer races with more strategy, more entertainment off track for the fans. So that's probably lacking a little bit. The access is good, but softer tyres at every round. That way, that sort of, you know, your undercut, overcut is a lot bigger with a softer tyre because you can push pretty hard out the gate and make up a solid 2 seconds pretty quickly versus someone that's on an old soft tyre that's faded. Look, just probably a bit more consistency in the stewards box, in the race control booth. And we need to do something to build the fan base up again. Like, I think they're losing a lot of the fan base. I don't know what that is. I don't know exactly how we're going to fix that. But it's got to be something to do with the way that it's broadcast.
Yeah, look, some of it's the longer races. I agree. I actually think we're at a point now where we should be having a 90-minute race as a minimum.
Yep.
One on the Saturday, one on the Sunday. Like, we're past COVID now. They were doing the shorter races because of cost cutting and COVID and all that sort of stuff. I get all that.
Yep.
All right. More rounds. Yeah, 12. 12's not enough. You know, but then you don't want to, like, 15, probably another 4 or 5 rounds.
I don't know. Where?
Well,
what tracks?
Look,
there isn't any.
Yeah,
Like,
that is. I mean, you can use Phillip Island. But I mean, they've got to up-spec that. You've got Queensland Raceway that you can use. That
they still use that.
Yeah, they were using it today.
No, but they still use that in the championship, don't they?
No.
Oh, is it gone this year?
Yeah, no. So Queensland Raceway. Obviously, you know, they're eventually going to lose Sandown.
Yeah.
There's that new Melbourne track at Avalon that's going to come back. So there's 3 there. I mean, yeah, we're using the Bend. Hey, there's Malala sitting there. You know, Revive.
Malala needs a massive upgrade, though.
Yeah, you know, it does need an upgrade, but there's enough motorsport tracks around that you can fit another 3 or 4 rounds. You know, like to. You know, if more rounds are there, but the racing's more regular. You know, but yeah,
I think that would help keep drivers. I think the drivers get bored in the middle, like with no testing and stuff like that. They get bored. So more rounds would definitely help keep the drivers keen, and that's another thing that if you listen to that full episode of the Dale Jr. download there, that Shane says like he can't wait to race 36 races or 36 weekends of the year. Versus the 12 that he's doing now. So, yeah, I think that's definitely one in the driver's book.
Do you think he's done a great job as being the reigning champion as an ambassador of the sport, promoting the category? Because there's no guarantee that he's got a NASCAR drive next year, at least from our side of it. He probably has, and it hasn't been published yet. But do you think as an ambassador of the sport, being the reigning champion, that he's, you know, done a good deed by the category?
No. Like... But has he done a good thing by putting some of that stuff out there? I think yes. I think letting people know that he's not happy and letting people know why. Like, it'd be different if he was just being a complete and utter D word for no reason, and you're just like, why is he so sour and salty all the time? But the fact that he's actually, like, he comes out and actually explains why the emotion, why the sad interviews and whatever, not sad, but nasty interviews, then I think that's okay. Like, you need characters. You need characters. Like, you look at, was John McEnroe the best you know, ambassador for tennis with all of his outbursts and stuff? No, probably not. But you needed those characters in the sport, and I think without them, the sport is pretty stale.
Look, for me, I look at it this way, and you know, again, I'm going to be critical, but I'm only seeing it from what I see from the thing before we head off to a break. I think the dialogue would be a little bit different if he was leading the championship, and the fact that he's actually got to drive and work for it now is pretty apparent. I think you know, he hasn't had a great ambassadorial role, and I think he threw the dummy out the pram when he got called out for his poor conduct post-race at Newcastle this year. You know, his mannerisms in terms of how he conducted himself post-race was, you know, poor, and the fact that he had a former teammate and one of the greatest drivers of all time call him out in his crap, I say, yeah, well done. You've got to be accountable for that. You've got to take ownership for it, and you've got to be responsible for it, right? Above the line. It's a simple life lesson. And then thirdly, previous complaints when he wasn't winning with Aero Wash. Everything's rosy when you're winning. You know, the guy's gifted. He's a damn good driver, you know. But you don't do yourself any favours, and it creates a really poor perception off track with the people that are the ones that are going through the gates, keeping you employed at the end of the day. So respect goes both ways. You know, go out there, get a good result, and, yeah, forge a career overseas. You deserve it, you know, because they do pay a lot more money. It is a big step up. So, but I think, you know what, look after the own backyard, because if it wasn't for Supercars, mate, you wouldn't be there right now.
Yep, that's probably
End of story. Goal. You know, and that's what these drivers have got to be grateful for. If it wasn't for this category, NASCAR wouldn't give two hoots that he raced in New Zealand. They wouldn't care. They wouldn't care at all. Yep. So, in actual fact, go out there and show why this category, a la Supercars, is one of the best categories in the world by going out and beating the Americans at their own game. Then you earn my respect.
You've reached the checkered flag of another episode of Negative Camber the Motorsports Show. A huge thank you to you, our incredible listeners. Your support and passion for motorsports fuels our enthusiasm to bring you the latest results, analysis, and interviews from the racing world. Keep that FOMO at bay by subscribing to Negative Camber on your favourite podcast platform. We'd also love it if you could leave us a review and share the show with fellow racing enthusiasts. Your feedback and support mean the world to us. Remember, Negative Camber is more than just a podcast. We're a community of dedicated fans who live and breathe motorsports. Follow us on socials, join us on our website, negativecamber.co, and be sure to subscribe to the Negative Camber Club for access to exclusive content, episode previews, and special deals from our amazing partners. A huge thank you goes out to our podium partners and our incredible sponsors. Your partnership allows us to continue bringing you this show and dive deeper into the world of motorsports. If your business adds value to the motorsport community, get in touch with us to become a Negative Camber partner. So until next time, stay fueled with passion, embrace the Negative Camber, and keep chasing those podium finishes.